Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1868B, and today's date is May 15th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Deep State Begins to Turn on Each Other. The cover-up always gets you in the end. Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk about being prepared. Now, we know there's natural disasters, and we know there's the deep state that likes to push a certain agenda. We know the deep state, they could do just about anything. Ask yourself this question. If the power went out for weeks or your credit card was of no use, could you feed your family? Could you survive? If the answer is no, it's time to act. I like to use my Patriot Supply for my emergency food supply. You should too. These food kits include breakfast, lunches, and dinners that last up to 25 years. So prepare with X22.com. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Well, everyone, it has begun. The deep state, they're starting to turn on each other, and they're pointing fingers. And remember, we've always said this. The cover-up always gets you in the end. And we'll be discussing that in just a moment. But first, last Wednesday, Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Senator Richard Burr, he subpoenaed Donald Trump Jr. to testify before his committee on the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. Now, Don Jr., he testified many hours before the Senate already. But Don Jr. just said, you know what? I'll cut a deal with you for a limited interview. I believe it's only like 4 hours, and there are certain questions they can ask him. Now remember, the Mueller report came out, and this is all said and done. But they're dragging him back in to try to keep this going. This is what they're trying to do. And you can see there are certain Republicans that are not with Trump. And it's completely obvious that Trump is really out there on his own. Yes, there are certain individuals that are with him, but we still have the neocons, we still have the deep state, we still have certain players within government that are completely against him. Now, the deep state, they're scrambling. Information is pouring out against him. The common theme is that they knew the dossier was fake before they submitted the information to the FISA court. Let's start laying all this out. First, we have Matt Gaetz, and he tweeted out the following. Dan Coates has over 50 transcripts from Clapper, Comey, Brennan, McCabe that have been voted out of the House Intel Committee to be declassified. We need to get to the bottom of where these lies existed and how this terrible investigation started. Take a listen to what he said here.
Haven't had the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, actually lay out for us what was in the transcripts taken by the House Intelligence Committee where they interviewed Clapper, where they interviewed Comey and McCabe and Brennan. And we ought to have that information. He's been sitting on it for 4 months, and we need to get it out.
Fascinating. Wait, I didn't know that, and I'm
Over
grateful to hear.
50 transcripts have been voted out of the House Intelligence Committee to be declassified so that we can get to the bottom of where the lies existed and how this terrible investigation
So why
started.
hasn't Coates made those public?
4 months, we're still waiting, but I think there's a bigger...
Now, what each and every one of these individuals are doing, they're continually using the same theme, that they all knew that the dossier was fake, and they all went ahead with the investigation into the spying of Trump. We have former Republican South Carolina Rep. Trey Gowdy. He dropped a potential bombshell regarding what information the FBI relied on to corroborate claims in the Steele dossier. Gowdy said when he was in office, he saw an FBI spreadsheet that cited news articles and information from longtime Clinton insider Sidney Blumenthal as corroboration for the dossier. Gowdy did not identify what information from Blumenthal was cited, but the Clinton ally shopped around a dossier of his own containing allegations about Trump. He said the following, "I've seen the spreadsheet, Martha. I've seen each factual assertion listed in that dossier, and then I've seen the FBI justification. And when you're citing newspaper articles as corroboration for factual assertion that you have made, you don't need an FBI agent to go do a Google search. When the name Sidney Blumenthal is included as part of your corroboration, and when you're the world's leading law enforcement agency, you have a problem." And Trey Gowdy, he saw all this information. He knows how bad it is. George Papadopoulos is out there, And he's saying that Brennan, who's the former CIA director, he was lying when he told MSNBC this week that the agency does not spy against domestic individuals. He said that's the reason he was flown to London to be spied on, and why the British were also meeting with me and probing me on the same exact day that these two figures were paying me and spying on me and recording my conversation. Yeah, usually the CIA doesn't spy domestically, and that's why they brought me to London to meet Stefan Halper and his informant. So I have to highly disagree with John Brennan, and I think the CIA is up to their neck in this. Yes, they knew that it wouldn't be okay to spy on George Papadopoulos in the United States. This is why he brought him out of the country. And this way, the British intelligence agency, they were able to spy on him. The CIA would be able to spy on him. Now, Joe D. said, listen, for the first time, I believe these guys are going to jail. He said, this is big. Brennan and Comey, they need about 5 attorneys each. Take a listen to what Joe D. says.
James Comey, Brennan, and Clapper have said to themselves, which one of us is going to pay the Barr bill? The Barr bill is coming due. And Durham's appointment means that the already occurred meetings between the Attorney General, the CIA Director, and the Director of National Intelligence have now focused on a laser that the core of this conspiracy began with John Brennan and ends with John Brennan in London and D.C. and the Democratic National Committee. This is very serious business, and for the first time, I now believe that some of these guys are going to go to prison.
Wow. You mentioned...
And like he said, everything is leading back to John Brennan. I mean, this is just unbelievable. Remember, last week, John Solomon obtained memos from a high-ranking government official who met with former British spy Christopher Steele in October of 2016, who determined that the Steele's dirt on Trump was inaccurate and likely leaked to the media. Cadillac flagged this in memos and handwritten notes just 10 days before the first FISA warrant on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page was granted. So the State Department's red flag on Steele went to senior FBI officials 8 days before FISA warrants that were granted on Carter Page. So multiple sources confirmed to John Solomon on Tuesday that Cadillac's red flag on Steele was immediately sent to senior FBI official. The email from State Department official Kathleen Cadillac was sent to Special Agent Stephen Laycock, then the FBI Section Chief for Eurasian Counterintelligence, 8 days before the first FISA warrant was granted on Carter Page. The FBI swore to the FISA judge that Christopher Steele's reporting has been corroborated and used in criminal proceedings, and the FBI determined him to be reliable and was unaware of any derogatory information pertaining to their CHS, confidential human source, who was also working for Fusion GPS, the Oppo research firm paid by Hillary Clinton and Perkins Coie, to dig up dirt on Trump. One red flag Cadillac caught. Steele claimed that payments to those recruited by the Russians to target the election were made out of the Russian consulate in Miami. There's only one problem with this claim. There is no Russian consulate in Miami. John Solomon pointed out another mystery. Cadillac had 2 exchanges with the FBI officials about Christopher Steele 2 weeks before her meeting. So Cadillac had 2 exchanges with FBI officials about Steele approximately 2 weeks before her meeting. The email contacts on September 29th to 30th, 2016 have been redacted except for a single phrase, "Thank you, Kathy." Congressional investigators want to know if the early exchange resulted in Cadillac learning in advance of Steele's work for the FBI or was a further tip-off to the FBI of Steele's intention to visit State Department where he had offered pro bono information in the past. So it looks like what is happening here is that they knew way ahead of time that the Steele dossier was not real. And there's a reason for this, and we're going to be getting into that in just a moment. But first, when Trump called the Mueller investigators 18 angry Democrats, he wasn't kidding. According to 73 pages of records obtained by Judicial Watch, Mueller Special Counsel Prosecutor Andrew Weissman led the hiring effort for the team that investigated the Trump campaign. Now, Tom Fitton said the following: "These documents show Andrew Weissman, an anti-Trump activist, had a hand in hiring key members of Mueller's team. He also happened to be the political opponent of President Trump. These documents show that Mueller outsourced his hiring decisions to Andrew Weissman. No wonder it took well over a year to get this basic information, and yet the deep state Department of Justice is still stonewalling on other Weissman documents." And this is part of Judicial Watch. Weissman's calendar show that he began interviewing people for an investigator job on the Mueller operation almost immediately after it was announced that he had joined the team in early June. On June 5, 2017, he interviewed former chief of the Public Corruption Unit of the U.S. Attorney Office of the Southern District of New York, Andrew Goldstein. Goldstein was a Time magazine reporter. Goldstein contributed a combined $3,300 to Obama's campaigns in 2008 and 2012. His wife, Julie Raw, was a reporter and editor for the Time for 13 years until 2013. He became a lead prosecutor for Mueller. The next day, on June 6, 2017, Weissman had a meeting with FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act Council. Weissman interviewed another prosecutor, Kyle Freeney, from the Department of Justice Money Laundering Section for the team on June 7, 2017. She contributed a total of $500 to Obama presidential campaigns and $250 to Hillary Clinton's. She was later detailed to the Mueller investigation. He interviewed a trial attorney who worked with him in the criminal fraud section, Rush Atkinson, on June 9, 2017. Records show that Atkinson donated $200 to Clinton's campaign in 2016. He is a registered Democrat and contributed $200 to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. Atkinson also became part of the Mueller team. Weissman interviewed Department of Justice Deputy Assistant General Greg Andres for the team on June 13, 2017. Andres donated $2,700 to the campaign for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand in 2018 and $1,000 to the campaign for David Hoffman in 2009. Andres is registered Democrat. His wife, Ronnie Abrams, a U.S. District Judge in Manhattan, was nominated to the bench in 2011 by Obama. He joined the Mueller team in August 2017. And now you know, before, why the Department of Justice was not giving Tom Fitton this information. And there's probably a lot more than he needs to get, like he's been saying. And I believe he will be getting it. Remember, the crime is not where the people get caught. It's normally them trying to cover up the crime. Devin Nunes and many others are pointing everyone to the origin of the investigation, and there's a reason for this. Now, Devin Nunes is letting everyone know why the origin of the Russian narrative is important. This is out of Conservative Treehouse. The scale and scope of the fraudulent construct is now a strongly enmeshed narrative, toxic to the systems of cohesive government. If you read the Weissman-Mueller report carefully, one aspect stands out strongly. The Mueller investigation was fully committed to the Steele dossier. An inordinate amount of the report is focused on justifying their investigative validity and purpose in looking at the claims within the Steele dossier. The investigative unit references their mandate based around the Steele dossier and the midsummer 2016 origin of the FBI counterintelligence operation. Why? Why was Crossfire Hurricane, which was in July 2016, and the Steele dossier, October 2016, so important to the principal intelligence apparatus and the Mueller team in 2017, 18, and 19? I believe former NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers has told us the answer. In early 2016, Rogers caught onto a massive and pre-existing weaponization of government surveillance and the use of collected NSA metadata for political spy operations. Everything that comes after March 2016 is one big blanket cover-up operation. All of it. The Russian election interference narrative, the use of Joseph Mifsud, Stephen Halper, the London and Australian embassy personnel, Eric Thompson, Alexander Downer, U.S. DIA officials, everything around Crossfire Hurricane, and everything after to include the construct of the Steele dossier, all of it was needed for the creation of an after-the-fact plausible justification to cover up what Mike Rogers discovered in early 2016 and the downstream unmasked records that existed in the Obama White House SCIF. Fusion GPS was not hired in April 2016 to research Donald Trump. The intelligence community was already doing surveillance and spy operations. They already knew everything about the Trump campaign. The Obama intelligence community needed Fusion GPS to give them justification for pre-existing surveillance and spy operations, the cover-up. They needed something to say, this is why we were allowed to do this. That's why the FBI and later the Mueller team are so strongly committed to and defending the formation of the Steele dossier and its dubious content. Why is the Steele dossier so important? From the beginning, most people have thought that the Fusion GPS objective was to dig up dirt on Trump for political exploitation. However, with all the recent information outlined, there's actually a more significant role for Fusion. The overall intelligence apparatus of the U.S. government was already conducted political surveillance on their political opposition. The systems of the intelligence apparatus, such as FISA 702, 16, and 17, databases searches were being exploited months, if not years, beforehand. When NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers discovered the use of the database, he shut down contractor access on April 18, 2016, which means they were doing this way before that. When Fusion GPS was hired by the DNC and Clinton team, also in April of 2016, immediately following the shutdown of FBI contractor access, it now appears the purpose was to provide cover for government surveillance already taking place. Perhaps part of that motive was fear of what Mike Rogers might do. The Obama administration needed an external source of information that could cover their domestic surveillance and spy operations. That's why Fusion GPS was hired, and why emphasis was put on using European and Australian intelligence contacts to create the plausible process to continue surveillance that was already taking place. Remember, we know this from Q. Obama was spying on many people, judges, politicians, way before Trump. And they were already spying on Trump. They needed a cover-up story of why they were doing this. Again, it's not the crime. It's the cover-up that gets you in the end. And now we see the deep state. They're in a deep panic. They are starting to turn on each other. And now, what are they doing? They're pointing fingers at each other. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page are blaming Loretta Lynch for the rigging of the Hillary investigation and her server and obstruction of justice. Bruce Orr is blaming the Department of Justice and FBI officials for ignoring his warning about Christopher Steele and the dossier. James Comey is bashing Strzok and Page, and Rod Rosenstein. Rosenstein is firing back at Comey. Andrew McCabe is attacking anyone pretty much with a pulse. Brennan is sitting back saying, this was all done legally. The court gave us a warrant. We were allowed to spy on them. Well, no, he missed the first half of it. You were already spying on the president without a warrant. Then you created a fake dossier, yes, you, John Brennan, and presented it to the court, and you were telling the court that it was real. The court doesn't do investigation. They're listening to what you have. So you falsely gave misleading information to the FISA court, which allowed you to get this warrant under false pretenses. This is why everyone is pointing the finger back to the origination of all of this. And it goes all the way back to Brennan. And before Brennan, before the dossier, they're going to go back even further and say, without that, then everything that Obama was doing, everything that they were doing was illegal. They were illegally spying on president-elect, a president, other politicians, other judges, and guess who has it all? Mike Rogers. He has all the information. Who else has it? Flynn. Flynn has all the information. Remember, this is not someone saying something to someone else. This is documentation. Who allowed it? Who signed off on it? Who approved it? And why they were doing it. And all these people are involved. And guess what? It's all falling apart. And now they're in such a deep panic, they're blaming each other. There's nothing that can stop this. Nothing. Now, down at the border, we see the Department of Homeland Security has issued a waiver which will ensure the expeditious construction of approximately around 15 miles of new border wall system in place of a dilapidated and outdated design in the state of California within the U.S. Border Patrol's San Diego and El Centro sectors. Now, of course, California was trying to stop this, and it looks like DHS decided to override this, and now the construction is going forward. Now, we need to remember that there are a lot of illegals entering this country, and the Department of Justice, they just released their latest report, and this is coming out of the U.S. Sentencing Commission. And what they've discovered is that 43% of all offenders last year were non-citizens. They were illegals that came into this country. So according to the U.S. Sentencing Commission, in its recently published 2018 report on federal sentencing statistics, 54.3% of the 69,425 federal offenders last year were Hispanic, and 42.7% of offenders were non-citizens. The two biggest offensive categories were immigration and drugs. Can you imagine if we had the wall, which we're getting right now, and we stop all the illegals coming to this country? Guess what? Maybe our court systems wouldn't be bogged down, and maybe we would save a lot of money in the courts. Something to think about. Now, what's very interesting, a couple reports ago, we talked about how New York doesn't allow you to transport weapons to shooting ranges, or if you have another home, you can't transport it. Well, it looks like John Ratcliffe, it looks like he's going after New York City with many other representatives. He tweeted out the following: New York City's ban on transporting handguns outside city limits clearly infringes on the constitutional rights to bear arms. I've joined at Representative Byrne and a coalition of my colleagues to file an amicus brief in support of the Second Amendment rights as this case heads to the Supreme Court. So how many people have signed up on this? About 119 representatives. And you can see they are out there showing that New York City is infringing on the Second Amendment. Now, Joe Biden is out there, and he is saying that the Second Amendment does not say you're entitled to own a gun. Well, if you read the Second Amendment, it says we have the right, so there is no entitlement. We have the right to bear arms, which means to carry, to hold weapons, arms. That's what weapons is, bear, to carry. So yes, the Second Amendment does exist to allow every single person the right to bear arms. And he's trying to make the case of why we need to get rid of weapons. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. Joe Biden was responsible for introducing the Gun-Free Zones Act in 1990. Charlie Kirk tweeted out the following: Did you know since 2009, 92% of mass shootings in America have occurred in a gun-free zone? Why do we have gun-free zones? Because in 1990, Joe Biden introduced the Gun-Free School Zone Act. Biden has done more to allow school shootings than the NRA or any Republican ever has. And if you notice, the places where there are weapons, very rarely do you see a mass shooting like we've seen in places where guns are not allowed. Now, as we discussed before, inanimate objects like guns do not commit crimes. It's the person using it. For example, if a person drives a car into a group of people, everyone doesn't go, oh my God, we need to get rid of cars with automatic transmission, because the automatic transmission allows the cars to run into people. No, we say, oh my God, what was the person doing behind the wheel? Were they on drugs? Were they okay? Did they have mental problems? Did they do this on purpose? But with guns, they don't do this. But remember, a gun is an inanimate object, same as a car. A knife is an inanimate object. Now, out in the UK, remember, they have very, very strict gun laws. And they keep saying, look, shootings are down. But you know what's up? Knife attacks. Well, do we blame the knives? Well, that's what they're about to do. They are blaming the knives. The knives are the problem. No. People will use any object they can get their hand on if they want to commit a crime. And out in the UK, it looks like there's a problem. There's an epidemic of knife stabbings, where they're saying there's a lot of people coming in with these injuries, and it's taking away surgery time for others. And this is a problem. And people enter the hospital who stabbed the individual going for surgery, and they try to finish the job. This is coming out of Breitbart in London. Cannes, London. 500 knives seized at family court in just 4 months. Remember, if you get rid of guns, they're going to go to knives. If you get rid of knives, they're going to go to bats. If they get rid of bats, they're going to go to rocks. If you get rid of rocks, they're going to go to pitchforks. If you get rid of pitchforks, it's going to go on and on and on. It has nothing to do with the object. It has to do with the person. And if you don't give people the right to defend themselves with something, guess what? All these people will be attacked, just like a gun-free zone. Now, it seems out in Iraq, the State Department is pulling employees out of Iraq amid tensions with Iran. Now, Iran is not going to be attacking Iraq. That's number one. Secondly, Iran is not going to start a war with the United States. Maybe the deep state will try. I believe they're going to have many different false flags. They're going to try to get us into a war. But again, Trump, he's cool-headed. He's a negotiator. He doesn't want to start a war with Iran. I think what is happening right now, like I've said many times before, they're using this to put pressure on the deep state that's in there. Trump's mission is not to destroy the people of Iran. Trump's mission is to go after the black sites within Iran and get rid of those people that are pulling the strings of the leaders inside of Iran. Why do you think John Kerry was over there? I mean, a citizen of the United States telling the Iranian government what to do in regards to the president of the United States. I mean, that's treason all over it. And also the violation of the Logan Act. But we do see Iran, they have halted some of its commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal. And we know that Iran last week gave the world powers 60 days to resolve the issue with the U.S. Or Iran most likely is going to back out completely. If they back out completely, guess what? Trump and Iran can make a deal. This is exactly what Trump wants. Because we know what Obama, Kerry, and the rest of the deep state, what they were up to. And we know they were using Iran for other things, criminal things. And Trump wants to create a relationship with Iran, which then will allow more information to come out of Iran to help with the court cases. And you can see that Trump now is putting pressure on the deep state in Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. Because the deep state, they just didn't go ahead and create this deal to have world peace with Iran. They didn't open and remove the sanctions in Cuba to have world peace. They did this to further their agenda to set up black sites to push their missions. That's why they were doing this. Just like going into Libya, Lebanon, Syria, Ukraine. They just used a different method in these countries because they tried for many, many years to have regime change in all these places, but they couldn't. So they had to change up their tactics. And they decided, all right, let's make a deal with them and let's pay them money. And guess what? That's exactly what they did. And now it's all unraveling. Everything is unraveling. And guess what? The clock is ticking down. The Patriots are in control. The deep state, they're scrambling now. They don't know what to do. They're caught in a lie, in a scandal, in treasonous acts, in crimes against humanity. It's all coming down around them. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.